Welcome to episode 7 of That Book Podcast.
Ooh.
We're your hosts. I'm Julianne.
And I'm Andrew.
We have some great books for you this week. Andrew, tell us about them.
All right, so we got some like Dune and Chase the Fun from last week, but also some new books. Some are audio books, which is pretty cool. Mystery. Some are mystery books, but also there's more.
Some are just mysterious because you can't see them on the table if you're watching.
Yes, exactly. And I got a slideshow later about a way to make money fun, even in a business, which is, I think, pretty cool. It's a really good book, so stay tuned for that.
We read a lot of books about money, but I promise this one's interesting. So.
I think they've all been interesting.
Yes,
so
that's true.
Let's jump into it. As promised last week, I finished Dune.
Yay!
Yes. I had only like 16 pages left, so it makes sense. There's also an appendix at the end, though, that's like 60 or so pages, and I finished that too.
You read it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I really liked this book. I was like, show me everything. And the appendix was a little bit more background on, I think one of them was about religious practices. One of them was about like plant life. And that sounds like it could be boring, but it actually was really good and fit within the narrative and was really cool. So, but there's more books, which there were so many listed at the front that I was like, I don't know how this is structured, but now I know what the sequel is. And it sounds pretty good because there's an afterword by the author's son, Frank Herbert's son, Brian, I believe, who also like carried on the series. So there might be more Dune books to come.
Wow.
But
okay.
Really enjoyed it. It was really good.
So I just have something to say. The reason I'm so impressed about you reading the appendix is that I really enjoyed the Lord of the Rings books when I finally convinced myself to read them. Uh-huh. In college, which is just a whole nother thing. Like, I just feel like college is a time in your life where you will try things that didn't previously entertain you because you're just so desperate to not...
To procrastinate,
yeah,
I think, yeah.
To not be studying, basically. Yeah. So I read The Lord of the Rings during that time of my life, and I still could not bring myself to read the appendices at the back of book through, even though I was really enjoying the series and I really wanted to, and I was even talking to people like on Goodreads and stuff, and one of my friends was like, oh, she's like, some of them are, but some of them are really good, like they have some backstory on these characters that we both really enjoyed, and I was like, great, I'm so excited, and I've never read them.
Well, that's
so
okay.
I'm impressed.
Thank you.
Yep.
I did it.
Okay. Good job.
What's your first book?
It's Chase the Fun. I talked about this one last
yes.
week. I also read a couple, we were listening to a couple of Agatha Christie books together, so I thought maybe we could talk about those ones next.
Agatha Christie books. So last week we were talking about Dead Man's Folly and how we had a couple of little theories and they didn't end up panning out.
No.
But Julianne did do a really good job towards the end of like figuring out puzzle pieces and what was going on.
I feel like what I said last week on the podcast was sort of right, but also terribly wrong at the same time.
I didn't feel like anything we said on the podcast was right, but I do feel like when we listened, we were only like 2/3 of the book through, so we read we listened to like another hour, and then you're like, oh, this thing, and then that ended up being so you did a good job.
Thank you.
I think, yeah. And then now we've almost finished what's it called? Cat Among the Pigeons.
Cat Among the Pigeons, yep.
We've almost finished Cat Among the Pigeons, and I have no idea who did it.
Me either.
But what did you say? You said something about the romance?
Yeah, like all I really know about this book is that I called the romance thread that's starting. We'll see if it lasts.
Yeah. You were like, this romance thread. I was like, what? No, maybe. And it's looking pretty promising. So
yes,
good job.
I said it's those two, and he was like, no, they hate each other, and I was like, that's why it's going to be those two.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
I've read a few of these Agatha Christie books. I know.
Yeah.
I know what's going on.
You know what's going on. How many Chase the Fun days? Because it's like a daily. It's like a one a day.
Yeah, I think I've read like 4 days. I don't know.
This week. Or total?
This week.
Okay.
So like I didn't make a lot of progress on Chase the Fun, but I am reading it, and it is still good.
Yeah.
Okay. Should I go on to another book?
No, I can do another book.
Okay.
Julianne got me Survive and Thrive, which is really nice. She got me this and another book that I'll probably dig into now that I'm done with Dune. It is the prequel, I believe, to the Hunger Games series. I didn't read them. I watched the movies, but I'm excited to get into that. But she got me this and that other book because I've been doing some good housework around the house, I guess. So it's a little reward, which is very fun. And
by housework, he doesn't mean like cleaning, although he does that too. He means like installing large furniture pieces, or like taking down a bookshelf that was built into the wall, and like repainting and all of these things. So yeah, those were like a little thank you gift.
Yeah, doing a little bit of time.
And I get the ideas for all these books because we go to bookstores and then he doesn't buy things, and then I'm like, haha.
You're like, And I've been putting stuff in my Amazon wish list. We have like our own books wish list and stuff. So so yes, thank you, Julianne, for this book.
It's good to have them separate because that's how I found Survive and Thrive.
Yes.
And if I had like gone to just a random shared wish list, if we like added books to it, I probably wouldn't have remembered whose was whose for some of them. Yeah.
So got this book. It's by John Meese. He he worked Okay, we're back. It's by John Meese, and he worked with Michael Hyatt with some of his ventures for a long time, and now he's striking it out on his own, and he's got a lot of really cool tips, and he's just a really cool guy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so I was like, oh, this book seems awesome, and it's called Survive and Thrive, How to Build a Profitable Business in Any Economy, including this one. And he wrote it in 2020, so he means like this, like, you know, what's been coming out of the COVID, all of the stuff that's going on economically. And so he's like, hey, we got this. And I haven't read very much. I just started it a couple days ago, but I really liked, he said, profit is like my report card for how well I'm serving others.
That's so cool.
And I thought that was really cool. So already, great line. I'm hooked. And it's just a really, like he started and he's like, sorry, I'm not trying to be all Debbie Downer on you. But I was actually getting kind of hyped by reading what he thought was Debbie Downer, because I was so yeah, I'm enjoying this. I'm excited. It's real short, so just packed with encouragement and little practical tips. So I'm excited about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One of the books that I read this week, I actually feel like I didn't do a lot of reading this week, so this is probably why I'm like, I've only read 4 days on Chase the Fun or whatever. But anyway, one of the books I read this week was Take Back Your Power by Deborah Liu, I think is how you pronounce it.
I think that's how she said it, yeah.
Yeah, I feel bad because we saw her at the Global Leadership Summit, so I know that they pronounced her name correctly there. I just don't remember. It's been too long.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is a book for women in the workplace. It's about like navigating the challenges of being a woman in leadership. There's a quote on the back that I think kind of sums up the idea of the book pretty well. And it says, you can't make the world fair, but you can take back your power. So she's really explaining like, okay, you know, you may have these things stacked against you, either other people's opinions or just the way that the system works. And here's how you continue to serve and thrive in your role in spite of that. So it's been very like empowering. The language on the book cover and stuff feels very like, maybe like more aggressive than I would want to pick up and read if I hadn't like heard her speak and kind of heard her heart. But then once you open the book and hear it, it's not aggressive. It's very much about, I don't know how to phrase it, but it's about like being who you are, not staying silent because you think that you're supposed to, but actually like appreciating your own voice and believing that you have value to bring to an organization, and also opening the door for others to do the same.
Yeah. Which is really cool.
So
I didn't realize that you were almost done with it.
I am almost done with it. I started it a few
awesome.
months ago, made some pretty quick progress because it's not a hard read. There's a lot of stuff to think about, but it's not hard to read.
Yeah.
And then I kind of took a break from it, so I think I should be able to finish it soon.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right, my last book of the week is not one I read physically. It is, I talked last week about Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. And this week, the library, my hold came through on Libby /Overdrive, and I got Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, which I'm really excited about.
I can't believe you're reading more Malcolm Gladwell books than me. I'm upset.
It's great. I think these are the first ones that I've actually read, so I'm...
Okay, so I'm still ahead, but I think I'm only like one book ahead.
Oh, well, I haven't finished it. I'm only like a third or halfway through. But it's really good. And he's talked so far about, he's talking about like what makes like the truly great, successful people that we kind of borderline idolize sometimes. like, how did they get their success? What made them these outliers?
Yeah.
And he said it's a lot less like grit and determination than we usually think. Because obviously, in order to get that successful, you have to be
gritty and determined
and all of that. But he says there's actually a lot more that goes into it. And for instance, like 14 of the 75 richest people in history were born in this like 20-year period in the mid 19th century because of the way that the American industry was going. And so, you know, Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, these people that were like in the oil, all these things that were rising, these huge booming industries. And so, you know, it's like, if you were born in that 20-year period, you had a much higher chance of being one of the top 75 richest people
in the entire world,
in history.
Yeah.
Than you know, born outside of that, right? And so there's these things, and he talked a lot about. I heard this before. It probably came from Malcolm Gladwell's book, but like people in NHL, most of them in like sports in general tend to be born right after the cutoff. So they're like the oldest people in their age group in that sport.
Interesting.
Yeah. So in hockey, and I think he said soccer in particular, because they're just a little bit bigger. So when they're a little bit bigger, then they get selected, you know, and a little bit more coordinated, especially younger, then they tend to get to be on more all-star teams. And so then they get more and more practice. And so as they get more and more practice and special coaching, then they're even better. Then so the gap kind of widens over time as that gap continues to grow over the course of the years. Yeah. So I was like, well, that's really cool. So he talks about that. I think he called that like first mover, and this like being born in the right time that makes it possible to have that advantage. And then also 10,000 hours being like kind of the faster you can get to working 10,000 hours in something, the more likely you are to be really successful. So he's like, Bill Gates was one of the few people really in the world that was able to spend as much time on computers as he did, in this like really ripe time for computer innovation. And so him and a few others were able to, you know, Steve Jobs knew the boss of Hewlett Packard and was like talking to him a bunch. And so all of these kind of like this time that they were able to spend on it. So there's a lot of really cool stuff, and I'm really excited to see how he ties it all together, because maybe I'll be like, oh yeah, they're outliers. I got some stuff that I can do with this. I'm not that outlierish, but you know, I'm gonna take what I can get and do it to the best of my ability and serve the world, survive and thrive. Yes.
Bringing it all together. That's so funny. Okay. The other book I've been reading this week,
I'm excited,
is called The Handbook of Home Design by Laura Jane Clark. I'm holding it up to the camera right now. You may not be able to see it. It is a beautiful book.
It's quite beautiful.
Teal. It has this like lime green binding. I'm obsessed with it. I'm also obsessed with it because it's written by one of the architects on one of our favorite like home improvement TV shows. It's a British show called Your Home Made Perfect, and they take these architects in and they create designs for problematic houses, and then they show like in VR, they take the homeowners there into the VR and they can kind of see like how it would be if they made the architectural changes.
And they're always very, like the two designs are always very different, and so you get to see a lot of the inspiration and the mentality that goes into what these architects' designs are on the screen in front of you during the show. So it's really, really cool. And one of the mainstays of the show, Laura Jane Clark, just came out with this book. Yeah,
so she's talking about basically the subtitle is An Architect's Blueprint for Shaping Your Home. I haven't gotten super far into it because right now she's just been talking about basically why houses stink and...
Specifically in Britain?
Specifically in Britain, yes.
But maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, she's mostly talking about in Britain, but there certainly are things in here where she's also speaking to American audiences, not so much in terms of like the history, but in terms of like, she talked about, you know, she's going to help you whether your budget is something that, and then she translated it to dollars. You know, it was like something in pounds, translated it to dollars, or something in pounds, translated it to dollars. So that was helpful. But yeah, she's been talking about just like different architectural movements and how the British are like really emotionally attached to Victorian style houses, which I don't think we have the same problem here as much. And she's like, there are problems with that because like you have a Victorian style house and your kitchen's going to be small. Mm-hmm. Like there's no way.
Yep.
But when architects first tried to start building like more modern designs, people were like, no, we don't like this. This is ugly. But now we want our same furniture. Like,
yeah. But now they're like, oh, our kitchens are tiny. Why is that?
Yeah. Now they're like, why aren't our homes built for our lives? So that's been really interesting. She's getting to the part in the book. I'm not very far in, but she's teaching you how to like use architectural, notation basically in mapping out your own house so you can kind of see where the bad parts are.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's like a nice blend of practical and...
Absolutely. And I don't know how much I'll be able to use the architectural aspect of it. I'm just... Because I really do like the layout of our house for the most part. I just am really fascinated by it. And so I'm enjoying myself
and it's beautiful and she's great. And so we're having a good time.
Yeah.
So does that conclude our first segment?
It does include our first segment. Are you ready for your book recap?
I'm ready for my book recap.
Okay.
Book report slideshow thing.
Is that...
This is great. Okay. All right, so again, for those of you watching, you can follow along on the slideshow with me. For those of you not, I will be explaining everything in detail, like how this is a cool blue and it's white with some orange and blue, just like the cover of the book, Profit First.
Oh,
it's white with some orange and blue.
Wow.
I'm feeling pretty good about how on theme my slideshow themes have been.
Yeah.
So
mine are just like, oh, I like this template, let's go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just like, what feels like the book? And,
nice.
That's what I've been trying to go with. So this is Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. Transform your business from a cash-eating monster to a money-making machine. And I talked about it a little bit last week, so I'll try not to repeat myself too much, because I had just read it last week, and it was so good that I went through it all really fast. So working on those house projects that got me my books that Julianne got for me. So.
It's like this endless cycle of books.
It's a virtuous cycle.
Yes.
And they say like a downward spiral. This is a upward spiral. It's great. How long did it take to read? I think it was 3 days, and I put a little sunglasses emoji.
Good job.
And
you did listen to it, right? You weren't like reading it.
Yeah, I was listening. I was listening to it while I was applying some polyurethane finish to the bookshelf, which is basically like painting. So it did not take a lot of brain work. So I was able to listen to Profit First, but it did take a lot of time. So I was able to crank through Profit First in that time. But it still feels pretty good.
Yeah.
Still feels
great job.
Still feels good. How many things I highlighted / underlined? I said 0. Slacker, I know. But as Julianne said, it's because I read it because I listened to it on audiobook through Hoopla.
Okay, so
yes.
Sorry, I have a question for you. How many things would you have underlined, do you think? Like, how many phrases or things do you remember that you were like, oh, I would have underlined that? Or I should go get the book and underline it, and then you just didn't?
The charts are, like, super cool, and he had to kind of, like, explain them. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really excited to look at those. I probably wouldn't have highlighted those because they're charts. Mm-hmm. I might have highlighted a couple aspects, but probably like 60 things. Probably would have had like 60 underlines.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of really good stuff in here, and it was all simple. Uh-huh. Nothing was like mind-blowingly complicated. It was a little bit more so listening to it when he's talking about percentages and stuff, and it'd be a lot easier to like look at the percentages than like hear them. Uh-huh. But yeah, it was like everything was really simple. So it's like it's one of those, oh, it's so simple. Why didn't I think of that underline kind of moment? So
gotcha.
there would have been a lot of those.
Cool.
Also, how many notes within the margin? 0 again. But as we mentioned, takeaways. My first takeaway is I need to read The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur.
That was very similar to my takeaway from Clockwork, which was I need to read Profit First.
Which you bought, and here it is.
And now you've read it.
Now I've read it.
And now I feel like I don't have to read it.
No, you should still read it. It's a good read. Yeah, that I should read The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur because he talks a lot about, so in this he's talking about how to take your existing business, or when you do make a business, how to break up the finances in a way that's really simple, that plays well into your psychology as a human and the way that you make decisions. All of it really good. But then he's like, and if you need to figure out how to create a business, read The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. So I'm like, maybe I should go do that.
Yeah,
so,
maybe we should.
Yeah, exactly. And so with Survive and Thrive, Profit First, and Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, I'm going to be like so good at having ideas and knowing what to do, but then obviously it takes a long time to figire out what problem you actually want to solve, and creating business.
You have to execute it.
Yeah. So anyway, second takeaway is make the business profitable from day one. And I talked about it last week. He talks a lot about growth versus profit, and a lot of companies think that you need to be all growth and then eventually be profitable. Like Spotify still isn't profitable, which kind of blows my mind. Mm-hmm. And he's like, make it profitable from day one, and then the growth will follow. And you won't be super stressed about where the money's going to come from and how much debt you have and all of this stuff, which was really cool. And again, one of those things that's pretty simple. You're like, yeah, of course. But when he talks about it, you're like, oh yeah, I can see why I might not be doing that if he hadn't told me that I should. So that was really good. I said a business should not be a financial burden, right? Okay. Similar. It's on a similar path to that. But like a lot of people are like, oh man, I gotta pour my blood, sweat, and tears into my business, and if I don't take a paycheck, so be it, right? He's like, no. Like, take your paycheck, give yourself, what you deserve, because, like, yes, we want to be working in the business, but we also want it to serve us. Like, we want a business, in large part because we want financial freedom, usually, right?
Right.
Is usually a big factor, but also we want to be able to serve people, and so like. Those things become less satisfying if it's a burden. So we don't want it to be a burden. We want it to be a joy, and Profit First is kind of like a way to make that happen, which is really, really cool. So I was just like really excited. Fourth takeaway: acknowledge that I am not psychologically perfect. Oh man, I can't even read my own slides here. Acknowledge that I'm not psychologically perfect when it comes to money and work. When it comes to money, and that I should work accordingly. Man, I did not phrase that well. I apologize to my wife, who is a copywriter.
That's okay. Yeah. I say things wrong all the time.
That's okay. Basically, I'm human. And so I should understand that, looking at the ideal financial picture and all of the fancy, super advanced spreadsheets and stuff, I'm just probably not really going to take the time to, like, understand that. He talks about that a lot. He's like, we look at bank accounts, see how much cash we have, and then we go, or we go, oh, I'm good. I can spend a lot of money, right? He says, psh. So understand, like, the system works within that. So I said, i.e., like, as an example, know that humans judge success by the money in the bank. So looking at that rather than all of the advanced.
I've been thinking, as you've been talking about Profit First, that it really meshes well with what we've been reading I Will Teach You to Be Rich. So that's cool. Yeah,
it's cool. Yeah, he's like, and you should also use the system in your personal finances. And I was like, sorry, Ramit said he already got us all hooked up with his system. So, sorry, Mike. All right, fifth takeaway. We're almost done. Allocate your budgeting categories based on Mike's cool spreadsheet with all the percentages and stuff that I was talking about, and make your expenses fit to your budget, not the other way around. So that was one of the really big things that is, again, simple once you think about it. But also you might not do naturally. So it's like, figure out what percentage you should allocate to expenses, and then figure out how to make your expenses fit within that. Rather than like, oh, I need this and I need this and I need this, and soon like all of your business, all of your money, your revenue is going to that. Yeah. To those expenses that you probably don't need if you want to cut back. So I was like, oh, that's really good. And then lastly, Mike might be an author and a successful entrepreneur, but he is informal and funny.
That's fun.
Which I was like not really expecting going into this book.
Oh.
But was definitely very fun to read.
Yeah, so. I think that's my bad because Clockwork was pretty entertaining. And whereas you knew I was enjoying myself reading I Will Teach You to Be Rich and some of the other books I was reading, you didn't really. I think because I was just like, oh, this is so good. I didn't really even talk about how entertaining it was too. Yeah. Yep,
exactly. Did I enjoy it? We'll see if this comes across well. On a scale from bankrupt to multimillionaire, this book is financial freedom.
Okay, so that's like, is that like if that was like 1 to 10, would that be like a 7 or 8?
Well, I keep trying to subvert
You keep trying to create a scale and then being like, it surpasses the scale.
Well, this isn't really surpassing it because multimillionaire is pretty nice. Right?
Yeah. I feel like multimillionaire and financial freedom, like...
Yeah.
But those are the same thing.
Well, but
except you don't have to have multimillion.
He does talk about how just because you're multimillionaire doesn't mean you're actually profitable.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he gives some examples about that. It's pretty cool to think about. So, it's really good. And I will try to have I would try to actually make my thing fit, my score fit on the line. I'm trying not to grade it on the scale 1 to 10 though.
No, I know. I didn't really.
It's really good.
It sounded like financial freedom is like part of that, but you don't have to make as much. I don't know. Anyway, so.
Yes, it's
good. True. You did a good job.
Okay, thank you.
It was me trying to be too literal.
All right, main emotion felt while reading.
Oh.
Yes.
We're getting into the emotions.
It's a very long one. In awe of the simple effectiveness. So I'm sure that there was a more concise way to say that better. I don't know. But I said in awe of the simple effectiveness, 50%.
Okay.
Because I could have just said awe, but I didn't want to just say awe. In awe of the simple effectiveness. So it was like specifically very focused awe. Okay. Yeah. I said 50%. Entertained, 31%, because he was very, very funny and entertaining. Inspired, 15%. Because we also like... Man, this is really good. A lot of the book is getting into the nitty gritty, especially towards the end. So I think inspired would have been a little bit higher, except that, getting into the weeds.
Yeah, I felt like Clockwork was really practical too, which I think is good. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I said touched.
You were touched?
Touched, 4%, because he talks about how he lost everything, basically. And his 9-year-old came out with her piggy bank and said, "It's okay, Dad, we're going to make it."
Aww.
Yeah. So...
That's really cute.
Yeah, it's very, very, very cute.
Aww.
Should you read it? If you want to know a really simple yet effective way to budget for a business to be fulfilled and profitable, then yes. What will I do now? I'm working on testing out the system with my contract income, just to kind of get in the habit and test the system out. So I'm pretty excited about that. He said right now I think it was chapter 3, at the end of chapter 3, he's like, right now, go open a profit account. And so I did that. And so I have to transfer 1% of all the money I make into that profit account. And at the end of the quarter, I will get half of that to party with.
Nice.
Yeah. So
party.
Yep. Just so you know, I don't think I told Julianne that until just now. So we're gonna have a good time with the however much money that ends up being. And that's the end of my slideshow.
Wow. Okay. Yes. Great.
And so that concludes our second segment, which means the podcast is done.
Okay.
So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.